Thank you very much. We'd like to tell you about our experiences through here the last years, the last days, if you want. We were a couple of days ago, we had a symposium on poetry of the real, and we would like to share this experience with you and then introduce a new initiative as well at the same time. So allow myself to say from which position do we start here in the talk, and this is from the position of an art school and an arts research institute as well. And this is what we call here in Basel Campus of the Arts. And Campus of the Arts, you see the images. The images is the activities, this big mix of cultural institutions. It's an art school and it's research. So, and there's architectural offices, there's landscape, the diversity. You're much welcome to come and visit us there. So this was the basis. And when we talk about research, here's one. I start up with one example. But this is where we have shared interest. So we start in Fukushima with one of our research projects. Susanna Hedrich is artist and researcher having a big project in our university for the moment. So Bernd, thank you for sharing this discussion with me, and I'd like to give the word to you to continue from
we just perhaps show some images from Fukushima, and then I start from my position. Yeah,
so now we arrived in Fukushima, and Susanna Hedrich, she started up with a tradition.
Exactly, but also with the censoring machine. I think this project, to some extent, reflects the situation we are in. When we try to talk about reality, we are not anymore sure that our senses are really representing reality. We need technical sensors to do that. This is a new understanding of what reality was. And of course, Fukushima is also a symbol for human beings transforming the Earth to such an extent that it becomes a completely different planet. And at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt, the HKW, we had a 3-year project called the Anthropocene, which had exactly this at its center point, that the classical notion there is a stable world, a stable reality with stable objects does not exist anymore. We as human beings are so much interfering into this world that our understanding of the world also has to change, that we are not anymore able with our normal ways of perception seeing what the real is. The whole discussion, for example, about climate change, which is to some extent also related to this kind of events, is based only on digital materials. So we are completely constructing and reconstructing our world. And the interesting aspect referring to the past is that the whole project of modernity was based on a more or less stable world. If you look at the museum, in the center of the museum is the object, and humans try to relate to the objects in order to understand from different perspectives what these objects are, what a painting is, but the object itself is stable. Now we are in a situation where we are creating a completely dynamic way of environment. The world is not anymore stable. And so what is interesting in this project of Susanna Hedrich is that she is exploring these worlds with her artistic concepts. And as you said, what is interesting besides this reference to the technical means in order to find out what the world is the reference to the warrior situation, the samurai. Because the samurai for her is we are in a kind of samurai situation, which is very adventurous, which we don't know what it's going to be, and we need a kind of new attitude to that. Perhaps you go one step further. Yeah, and for me, this image of Goya, which is part of his really well-known circle, which is the image of Saturn, the god of time, which he did in the 1820s, to some extent, is foreseeing this situation we are in. Because here, Saturn is eating the children. That means he is eating the future. And what we see in technologies such as Fukushima is that we build in the past technologies which are eating up our future. And this is the situation we are in, and I think, and perhaps in the second round we are going to speak, what does that mean for institutional work? Because I think deeply that we need to have new kind of research strategies to deal with this new world we are creating at the same time.
Yeah, and so now we are starting. You hear it, it's about the needs of how to respond to an interpretation of the real, a poetic expression of our reality, how we can interpret it. We'd like to give one more example before we come into a discussion on this. And this is a small film clip. You'll see some minutes of it. And this is the artist Michael Karikis, and he was participating in our symposium this week as well. So we'll give you a few minutes.
Terreno. bipolitico realizzato in comune. L'amore è una forza produttiva. Stiamo producendo un nuovo mondo, una nuova vita sociale. L'essere è una trama di realizzazioni in cui abbiamo il potere di intervenire.
Ecco il rompicapo sull'amore. Frantuma le regole del mondo che conosci e ne crea uno nuovo. In amore si guadagna un nuovo corpo, un nuovo essere. Ma l'amore ha un'altra e apparentemente opposta faccia. L'amore ti lega in modo che sembra possa durare per sempre. Rimani con due nozioni di amore che sono ugualmente insostenibili. Una per cui l'amore è sempre tutto un cambiamento. Una per cui non sono ammessi cambiamenti. Le due facce dell'amore pongono un problema se si pensa in termini politici. Da un lato, un amore politico deve essere una forza rivoluzionaria, rovesciando le sue norme e istituzioni. Dall'altro, deve fornire meccanismi di connessione durevole e legami sociali stabili. Deve creare istituzioni durature.
So this was a small impression of the film, and the film is from an abandoned area in northern Italy, industrial area, and then it shows the dialogue with the children who is not used to seeing this, where they're meeting it, where they're confronted with the new situation, the situation, what they are as next generation are going to take over. And this challenge, this is what the film is about. This film is, after our understanding, a research project as well, what we call a praxis-based research project, what you already started to mention. This is what we see for the arts is necessary so that the art in a qualitative way can confront the contemporary situation in all its complexity.
Yeah, I would also argue, following from what you said, that not only the arts have to change, let's say giving up this classical representational mode on what the world is, but also this new kind of working has impact on knowledge production processes vis-à-vis the universities. Because also the disciplinary work of the universities is not anymore able to cope with this kind of fast changes of transformations of the world. We could see now with these factories, because these industries, coal mining industries, were at some at some point of history, were the driving force of history, so to say. Now they are fossils, they are relicts. And the question is, we are living in a situation where completely our world is transformed by new technological generations, and the question is, what is life then? Is society in that context? And I think this is a wonderful project, how to deal with these kind of transformation processes to reflect the situation. What does that mean for human beings to living in these contexts?
Yeah, and this is where we are continually confronted with that it's not only about the work production, it's not only about the artwork, it is about making a difference, and it's about taking influence in a new and challenging way. And learn how to take in knowledge from others, and maybe where the senses, where we say we as artists, that we have a very defined, we have a very educated way of, with a conscious way, setting in the senses and making complex ways of combining. You could talk about composite knowledge structures. And I agree with you that the universities, when you come from humanities, if you come from natural sciences, you are not educated to trust your senses. In the classical disciplines, in the sciences, you were asked, forget about your senses, be objective. And the arts classroom will say, be critical, use your senses. So now this is the two old positions where we have to negotiate new ways of trust.
Exactly. And I want to also to strengthen this other point. What the artist does with his children is not just representing the situation they are in, but also learning to relate to the situation, to relate to this environment where a lot of people are just leaving the place because there seems to be no future. So and this is the important aspect what art and performance, visual representation in this context can play, to build up, not just to represent the situation, but to build up new social relationships with the environment, but also amongst the children and, of course, also the children and the elder people in this context.
And now we have chosen dramatic examples where it's more like there's no future examples, but I could give another example from the Campus of the Arts, and this is our food culture lab. And here during the Art Week, we had a small celebration of the potato. And how do you celebrate a potato and why it's important? And there we know that the students are looking for new ways of dealing with food cycles, how to share food, how to sell food, how to produce food. They're very critical and they're analyzing the situation, testing new ways of doing it. And there they found, through their research, they found references to the French tradition, you know it all from Van Gogh, with the potato eaters, which was a significant description of a way of life under poor people. The same situation you had in France with the gatherers, the collectors, where people were forced to, in order to get food, they were forced to go and look at it on the fields, the leftovers from the others. Agnes Varda made a few years ago a film on the theme, and this is the way the students or the researchers, they would contextualize it through historical facts from the natural sciences and from new aesthetic practices. And this combination, this is what gives perspectives in a critical future way of acting.
Perhaps I also add an example from the HKW. We did a big project on housing issues, the question of social housing, and the important aspect for us with dealing with urban transformation was to look who are the losers in the game. And of course, the losers are students, older people, migrants, and what does the city means for these kind of people. So we were engaging different kind of groups and brought them together with international architectural offices to work out new imaginations, what could the city look like, on the basis of their experiences, on the basis of their life in the city. So I think one major aspect of this kind of new research is, on the one side, not just representing, but intervening in a situation, trying to transform a situation. And second, to do that, of course, not from the perspective of power, but looking who are the people who are left out of the processes and taking their perspective in order to develop new projects.
Yeah, and this is the experience what we have had over the last 10 years, probably, where we see new practices are coming, new disciplines are meeting each other, and new and very interesting and very rewarding ways. And in order to support this, so in Basel here, and in dialogue with you as well, we are starting, I have just announced a new international research center. We call it European Center of Art, Design and Media-Based Research. And this is in order to coordinate an international dialogue and international research project, which is concerned with the critical thinking and this kind of collaborative knowledge production for a critical understanding of future perspectives.
Yeah, I think, I hope we made clear our point, and if there are questions from the audience, we can perhaps go into more details what you are just interested in.
Yes, so now we are. That was
basically what we can say is what we are both proposing from different perspectives. We coming, let's say, from more art-oriented institution and becoming a cultural center for dealing with, which is also research-based. And the school coming more, let's say, from a classical art school background and engaging in these new practices, our both interest is to create kind of new institutions which are meeting and the questions we have to deal with in our century.
Yeah, and I know some of my colleagues. Okay, first questions are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your perspectives of art discourse now. And so I'm working with artists, and I feel that the stress of institution for critical practice is so high on them. I read their artist statement, and it's about getting into this kind of discourse. And I feel that the practice I see and the formulation of ethics, of critique, is very, very high. And so what I observe in the practice of young artists is that they use, for instance, the internet like they are plugging pictures and they stabilize. So it's the contrary to what you said. And I would like to make a thesis on the question of the Anthropocene, that there's, in the arts, a very strong movement with the young ones to get back to the anthropos, to stabilize, where everything is fluid, where they are under a huge stress to produce knowledge, to be critical, to answer the discourse. They are doing something pretty much else in their practice, as far as I can see.
Maybe I ask from an answer from an educational point of view. This is, it depends on in which disciplines or in which field of interest the students are. There are different study cultures. We see it, we educate both in media, in design and in art. And you have interdisciplinary practices, we call it aesthetic practices. And yeah, there you couldn't talk about the withdrawal into classic arts production. They have an expanded understanding and expanded willingness to investigate and to meet others in corporations. This is our experience. But of course we respect singular student as well who has different demands.
Okay, from my perspective, I completely understand your point. I think, and besides the Anthropocene project, we just started a new project which is called Canon Questions. What is a new canon, or what could it be? Which is, and the canon, of course, is always a stabilizing way of dealing with the world. And I think what the challenge is to have two strategies. On the one side, to destabilize, so to say, traditional knowledge systems because they are not functional anymore, but then to ask what are the new ways of stabilization, because we need, of course, new kind of common grounds. But the way to do that will be very different from the way in the 20th century and the 19th century. So this is the challenge then, what kind of new strategies, conceptualizations we can take in all areas to stabilize, I completely agree, the world we are in order to have a common ground, to understand each other at all. But it will not be the old ones.
Can we ask for more questions?
So we just...
I think there's one more.
Well, I understand what you're saying, what your aim is, and still, for me, it's a question why we have to call this research. And I'm playing the devil's advocate now. Isn't it what we very often hear from the institutions who grant the research money is that it is just hidden practice of art. And I would really like to hear from you how you differentiate what is the research on that. I would say art was always reflecting on a social situation, on our world, and what makes it to research.
Yes, I give it a go and try, because we are in a very complex field of knowledge production. And for me, I started up as a sculptor and installation artist, and stumbled into that. I saw that the similarity was what I was doing had much more in common with biochemistry and gene manipulation as I would ever have expected. And this, from my own point, it was I became very critical about the biochemistry, and they're always claiming how objective they were in their research. So I started to become doubt about the definitions. So this comparing the own praxis and starting to see the deficits in the definition of the academic theories and practices and fields of experimentation, then the differences slowly blurred. There are definite differences, but the closer you come to anthropology, ethnology, gender, then you are coming. It's not so clear how to define that, but I know that it is from an institutional point of view. It's very important to define own rights and own rights of definition of what knowledge is. But as I see it, we have produced so many interesting results with a clear research part in it. If it is, you could say, generative knowledge, or you could say that there is a solid reflection from an artist's point of view on an artist's praxis as well. So this is two different ways of dealing with the research question, which is both valid for further. So for me, it is more about changing the understanding and looking for what is the challenges of society, and how do we negotiate with each other from different traditions and disciplines that we find solution or work for statements of high quality. I don't know if you answer to it.
May I? I think it's a question of, the situation we are in is that we are establishing practices and at the same time trying to understand what we are doing. So trying to understand means to develop a language to describe what we are doing. And to speak about this practice as a research practice, I think is one perspective on the practice, which contextualizes, so to say, in a kind of academic and scientific discourse. From the perspective of the HKW, the Haus der Kulturen der Welt, we are not speaking anymore about research in that sense, but about the idea of curating ideas in the making. Which of course takes on this classical idea of curating, meaning taking care of very fragile ideas which are not yet defined yet, which are not yet put into a discipline, in order to develop them conceptually but also aesthetically at the same time. I think this is another way to describe this process and to make clear that it is not the disciplinary process, but it's not also a classical art process we are engaged in. How that is then related to, let's say, the classical disciplines and to the arts is then itself a question of discussion. I mean, it's open to discussion.
Yeah, thank you. So, I take more questions. It doesn't look as if there's urgent question. I would like to go one, just to recall you. This is what we are starting a little bit to negotiate here, negotiating the new knowledge in the arts, design and media. This is a platform where we would like to do it there as well as all over the world. Other people are doing it as well. But if you have more interest, then please contact us. Please take up the debate with us. I would like to tell you there's, for the participants here, as far as we have books along, you're welcome to take an example. Jenny here will give you one. And this explains more in depth the understanding from side of the art schools and our partners. So should we finalize here? Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you very much for participating, and thank you very much for participating.
Have a nice day.